Good morning. Welcome back for the next session. Hope you are doing your work on time and revising what we have done earlier. So, what did we do last time? Yes, I can hear you. I got the answer. Very good. So, let's just move ahead with the topic. And last time we did discuss about the electric dipole. So, we will discuss something more about this electric dipole. So, what we'll be doing today is one of the derivation on electric dipole and different forms of writing the equation. So electric dipole mein today we'll be doing a torque, which you have already done in 10th standard. So I don't need to explain you what is this torque and everything in detail, but still I will give you one formula that torque is nothing else but the force acting at that point into the perpendicular distance from the line of action of the force. So let's say that we have a uniform electric field and we place the dipole in that uniform electric field. So let's say that I have this as my electric field and we are discussing with respect to a uniform electric field, because there is a difference when I place a dipole in a uniform electric field and a non-uniform electric field. So let's say that this is my electric field and we need to give the direction to this electric field. So let's say that the electric field is acting in this direction. So when I say that electric field is acting in this direction, I presume that there is something which is positive charge over here and there is a negative charge over here. So field lines are given from the positive charge and move up to the negative charge. Let's say that in this particular uniform electric field, we place a dipole, that's the electric dipole, with a charge minus q and charge plus q, and let's say that they both are placed at a distance 2l from each other. I have already told you that what should be the diagram and how you should draw the diagram. So this is my dipole and the length of this dipole is, let's say it's 2l, and let's say that this particular dipole is at an angle theta from this electric field. So let's say that I indicate this particular field and let's say that this angle is theta. So my electric dipole is placed in uniform electric field at an angle theta. Then there will be forces acting at the points. So at this particular point there will be the force which is acting this way. So that will be the charge. I know that E is equals to F by Q. So my F will be equals to Q into E. So at this end the force which is acting will be Q into E. QE. At this end the force will be acting in this direction. Now why is this? I will tell you that. So here you get this is Q E bar. Now if you look into the diagram, if you look into diagram properly, you will see that this is plus q charge of a dipole will get attracted towards the negative charge, that is the negative field. So it will start moving this side. And if I look at this particular charge, this is minus q and this is my positive field charge, because we know that this is positive and this is the negative of the field. It will get attracted towards the positive charge, that's the positive side of the field. So there will be the motion in this particular dipole, and when I discuss with respect to motion, I know that I know there will be two types of motion which can take place. One is the translatory motion and the other one is the rotational motion. Now, in this particular case, in this particular diagram, since these two forces QE bar and QE bar, they are equal in magnitude, opposite in direction, so my net translatory motion in the body will be 0. That means there will be no translatory motion. It means that this particular dipole will not move in forward direction. So when it is not moving in the forward direction, but due to such force, there will be a torque acting on the body, and which will produce the rotational motion. So we have to apply the formula of torque over here. To apply the formula of the torque, we know the force is QE, we need a perpendicular distance. So force and the perpendicular distance, so let's say that this is my perpendicular distance from the line of action. So this is 2L and this is theta. So if I find sine theta from here, what will I get the value of sine theta? Sine theta is opposite side, which is this, upon hypotenuse, which is 2L. So I get therefore this as 2L sine theta. That means this particular distance is nothing else but it's 2L sine theta. So if I apply the formula of torque over here, we know that the body is, there is no translatory motion in the body, so it will be a rotational motion. That means if I place a dipole something like this, there will be two forces acting on this side to move this in a linear, that's translatory. It won't move that, so it will be having a torque something like this. That means it will have a rotational motion something like this, and then again it will move this side, then it will move this. So it will keep on oscillating like this. So actually till the time it comes to equilibrium, something like this. So I can say that such kind of a dipole moment which is placed in a uniform electric field will produce the oscillatory motion. And when I say it's oscillatory motion, the body can have a simple harmonic motion. So such an electric dipole has SHM, simple harmonic motion. So if I find and apply the formula of torque, that is torque equals to the force, which is QE, into perpendicular distance, which is 2L sine theta. Therefore torque is equals to, I get this is 2QLE sine theta. But I know very well that this 2QL can be replaced as P. So therefore torque is equals to P. Other thing remains as it is, P is sine theta. If you look into vectors, you know that AB is equals to, I can write this dot product as AB cos theta, and my cross product, which is, let's say it's A bar cross B bar, I get this as AB sine theta. So in the same way here also, it's PE sine theta, and when I write this in the form of cross product, I will get this as P bar cross E bar, which is my cross product. So torque is equals to P bar cross E bar will be the formula for a torque in vector form. So this is my vector form, and the unit will be Newton meter. So if you apply a right hand screw rule, you will get the direction of the torque at each points over here. But if I want to find the maximum torque acting on this, and I use this formula, maximum torque PE, but for maximum torque my sine theta will have two values which are varying from 90 degrees to 0 and like 90 to 90. But if I take maximum torque, then sine theta is equals to that sine 90, which is equals to 1. So I get maximum torque equals to PE. So you can apply this formula and get the value of the torque or the electric dipole moment or the electric field using this formula. But let's say that if such a dipole is placed in a non-uniform electric field, then what will happen? And this is your homework, and I know you all are so smart. You will work on this and you will tell me the answer. So this is the derivation you should know. They have asked this in the boards for 2 to 3 marks, and you should know this how to derive it. Alright, so let's just go ahead in another topic. I'll introduce that to you, but before that let's have some basic knowledge about some topic. Let's say that I have a certain elliptical shaped body which has an area A. I know very well this area is nothing else but a scalar quantity. But the question is that, can we ever convert a scalar quantity into a vector quantity? To convert this scalar quantity into a vector quantity, what I can do is that I just define the direction for such a body, and the moment I define the direction, which is normally taken perpendicular to the plane, that's the normal to the plane of the paper. So let's say that I draw a normal, and when I draw a normal, let's say that this particular normal defines the unit vector, which is n cap. So what is the definition of the unit vector is the ratio of a vector to its magnitude. So therefore at this end, this particular value will be my vector A is equals to n cap A. So I had made this scalar quantity a vector quantity by defining the direction and converting the scalar quantity into the vector quantity. Similar, you can define such quantities and convert the scalar quantity into the vector quantity. Now, before we go ahead, my question to all of you, but I don't know how far do you know what means the flux. I'm not talking this with respect to physics, but in general, what does flux means? Which you have done in 10th standard. So any clue what does flux means? Yes, I got the answer. Flux means number of field lines linked with the surface, or some other way also you can define, but this is the basic definition. Number of field lines linked with some given surface. Either it can be a magnetic field lines, it can be electric field lines. In that case we will make a general statement as flux. So let's say that I have some field lines. These are all my field lines, and let's say that in such a particular electric field I place an arbitrary any such object. So let's say that this is particular plane which is placed inside the surface and which has area A. If this has area A, can we take a small area over here called as dA? So this dA is my small area. This is my electric field. This is my scalar quantity. If I want to make it a vector quantity, then I draw a normal in the outward direction and I write this as dA bar. So dA bar indicates that it's a vector area, or we call it as this is area vector or vector area. And let's say that from here the field line is like this. So let's say that theta is the angle between the area vector and this field. So let's say that this particular angle is theta. So theta is the angle between the area vector and my electric field. Now, just for an idea, I have how many electric field lines? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Out of these 5 field lines, how many are interacting with this surface? That means field lines which are linked with the surface. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. So I can say that the electric flux through this particular whole area is only these 4 field lines. So how do we represent now this electric flux? My electric flux is phi, and when we write E here, indicates is the electric flux. And according to the definition, my electric flux phi E through any surface is always the integral of area, the dot product of E bar and dA. This is the definition of electric flux. So if you look into the definition, it also says that electric flux is a measure of the number of lines of force passing through some surface held in the electric field. So I get here as the formula wise phi E equals to integration of the area E bar dot dA bar. Now the field lines which are emitting out of the surface is always taken as positive. The field lines which are entering in the surface is always taken as negative. So if I am saying that I have a closed surface, let's say it's not like a plane but it's a closed surface, then my field line across the whole surface will be phi E equals to, we put such a closed integration sign and then E bar dot dA bar. So phi E, that is the electric flux, is equals to E bar dot dA bar, but it's a closed surface. So if I simplify this ahead, what do I get this as? Phi E equals to, I know this is dot product, so let's say that I take this closed surface and nothing else, but it's a sphere. So I get this as E dot dA, and it's a dot product, so I get E dA cos theta. If I simplify this ahead, what will I get? It's E dA cos theta. I take E and cos theta outside, and then I have closed surface of dA. Now what is the area of a closed surface sphere? That's the surface area. It's 4 pi r square. So E into cos theta into 4 pi r square. R is the radius of the sphere. Or if I am talking with respect to in general and I am not taking any sphere, then I write this as E A cos theta. So my phi E equals to E A cos theta is the in general equation, and we will be applying this equation in many cases. Let's say we apply this for a different angles. Then how do we get the answer? So I have an equation phi E equals to E A cos theta, and I apply this for different angles. Let's say my theta is equals to 0 degrees. So what will be the value of phi E? Phi E will be equals to EA, because cos 0 is 1. So phi E equals to EA. If I take this theta equals to 180 degrees, I get phi E equals to minus EA. If I take this theta as 90 degrees, my phi E will be equals to 0. So did you get it? What does phi E means? Phi E means is the electric flux, and the formula for electric flux henceforth will be EA cos theta, which will be using it. So the next part, a small work. You have to find what is electric flux density. See, the word itself describes everything, so that you have to do. This is homework, electric flux density. After that you will write the unit of this, and you will write the dimensional formula for this. So this is your homework. So the next important topic is Gauss theorem. What is this Gauss theorem? Gauss was the scientist, and he found out something which is actually a hypothetical statement. There was no proper evidence, so we call it as an hypothetical statement. And what does this statement says? And it has a relation with respect to the electric flux. So what does this statement says is the electric flux, that is phi E. So the electric flux through any closed surface, very important word, closed surface, is equal to 1 by epsilon naught times the net charge, let's say Q, the net charge Q enclosed by the surface. So my formula will be phi E equals to Q upon epsilon naught. This is my Gauss theorem or statement of Gauss. It's a hypothetical statement, practically cannot be proved. So I can write this phi E equals to Q by epsilon naught. Also we got one value of phi E now for a closed surface. The word is closed surface, so we write this in this form also. So phi E equals to this, or phi E equals to this. This is my Gauss theorem. So what does it says is, if I take any charge and I close that particular charge, then whatever is, let's say that I have say a charge over here, and I close this particular charge in a three-dimensional figure, then whatever is the electric flux which is given out of this, that is phi E, is always equals to the charge, that is the Q, upon the permittivity. So this is epsilon naught, so we are talking with respect to the air or the vacuum. Let us derive this equation, that is phi E equals to Q by epsilon naught. Let's say that I have any such arbitrary surface, and let's say that the surface is something like this. It's a three-dimensional closed body, and let's say that my charge is plus Q, which is at point O, which makes some conical angle over here, and this is what it makes the angle. Let's say that this is my angle, which is very small, and this is d omega. Now let's say that we take a very small area over here, and this is my small area dA of a whole area of a body A. Let's say that in between point here is P. Then my electric field will be always normal to the surface. So this is my electric field, and let's say that the area is acting somewhere in this direction. Now in this case, the dA and E we are showing by a small angle, let's say it's theta, and this is my n cap, which is defining the direction for area. So now in this particular diagram, I can easily find first the value of flux through this small area. So what will be the value of flux through the small area is d phi E equals to, I know the formula, that is E bar dot dA bar, since the area is small, so this the equation I get this as E dA cos theta. I know that electric field is E equals to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught Q by R square. That's the equation for E. I substitute the value of E in this equation, so I get therefore d phi E equals to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught Q by R square dA cos theta. So I got the value of d phi E in this case. But this is something what you learn at a higher standard in math, that there is something called as a solid angle. So my solid angle here is d omega. So this d omega is my solid angle, and the value of this d omega for a solid angle is dA cos theta upon R square. So if I substitute that value over here, I get this as therefore d phi E equals to, I substitute dA cos theta by R square as d omega, so I get this as Q upon 4 pi epsilon naught d omega. So if I want the total flux through this, that is, I don't need d phi E, I need the total flux, so I need to integrate this, and we know it's a closed surface. So if I integrate this, that is my integration of this for a closed surface, that is Q upon 4 pi epsilon naught d omega. So integration of all this will be the flux, which is phi E equals to, my Q upon 4 pi epsilon naught is constant, so I get this as Q upon 4 pi epsilon naught constant, integration of closed surfaces d omega. The value of this d omega is actually 4 pi, so I get this as Q upon 4 pi epsilon naught into 4 pi. This and this gets cancelled, so I get final statement as Q upon epsilon naught. So my phi E equals to Q upon epsilon naught, and this is my Gauss theorem. This can be asked in the exam for 3 marks. State the Gauss theorem and derive the equation. So let's go ahead. After knowing what is Gauss theorem and how do we deduce the equation of Gauss theorem, now what is important is what is a Gaussian surface, like what different type of Gaussian surface you can take, and what are the different properties. So I'll just tell you in short what are the Gaussian surfaces we can take. And its properties. So you cannot select any Gaussian surface. When we say it's a closed surface, there can be different type of closed surface, but which type of surfaces you can take as a Gaussian surface? The first one is it should be a closed surface. My condition is it should be a closed three-dimensional. It should be a closed three-dimensional surface or a body. Second, it should be a symmetric around the source, like whatever is the source you have, with respect to the source, such a geometrical body or the geometrical object which we take, it should be symmetric. Third, whatever the Gaussian surface we take, it should pass through the point at which E is to be found. So you have to take such a Gaussian surface which should be in symmetry with the source and should pass through the point at which we have to find. Such, the selection of such a Gaussian surface also depends on us how easy it can make us the calculations. So for example, if I say such object as sphere, that is the surface of a sphere, or I say the surface of a cylinder, or I say the surface of a cuboid, or the surface of a cube, all these can be taken as a Gaussian surface. But deciding that the source which is given, it should be symmetry with the source. You cannot take a Gaussian surface which is like a disk surface. My disk surface is not the proper Gaussian surface, because you may not get the symmetry with respect to the source. Also, you may not get a proper surface which pass through the point at which E is to be found. Also, you cannot take as like square surface. You cannot take square surface because very important is that it's not a three-dimensional object. So again, that's the issue. So let's just start few of the applications what you need to know with respect to in application. My first application is electric field due to a point charge. So I have to find the intensity of the electric field due to a point charge, also called as deduction of Coulomb's law. Deduction of Coulomb's law from Gauss law. Again, can be asked for 3 marks. It's an application and I'll teach you 2 to 3 applications, 1 or 2 applications you can try at home. It's simple, you have to just frame an idea how to simplify this. Also, we will find the electric field intensity due to an infinite line of charge. Second, third one is due to infinite plane sheet of charge. I'll derive these three. The remaining one or two you will practice this at home. That is electric field due to two infinite parallel sheets of charge. It's a simple derivation, and then I will show you one more which is again important, and that is thin spherical shell. So these three applications you need to know with respect to a Gauss law, and how do we apply the Gauss theorem and Gauss surfaces, how to apply all those things you will learn in our next few derivations. So let's just start with first one, point charge. So how do we derive the electric field intensity due to a point charge? So what we have to consider here is that, let's say that there is a point charge and we close this point charge with a Gaussian surface. So when I say it's a point charge, so basically I can assume that it can be a spherical in shape somewhere. So I take first a Gaussian surface, and let's say that I have to find at point P the electric field intensity due to this plus Q charge. So what I do is that I will draw a spherical shaped body which should be symmetrical to the charge. So if I draw a spherical shaped body using the center of this as plus Q, this will be my, let's say it's a spherical body. So what we need to know now is, if this is my spherical shaped body and this is my point charge, let's say this is at O, the area of this is, let's say it's A. I take a small area somewhere here, and let's say that this small area is dA. Now in this particular small area dA, this is my dA bar. So this is area dA, and this is dA bar, which is normal to the surface. And this plus Q charge will be giving field also in the outward direction. So this will be my field E. So my field, electric field, and the area vector, they both are in the same direction. And let's say I have to find the electric field at point P. Instead of here, I take this point P, now shift somewhere here or at any point on this. So I want to find the value of, or the value of E from this part. So what do? We have, in all these derivation, the basic thing is that we'll apply and find the value of phi E first. Whatever we have learned so far, that phi E is equals to E bar dot dA bar, or E dA cos theta, that we do first, and then we apply Gauss theorem ka phi E. Equate both of them, you get the answer. So let's say I start from here, and I need first phi E for this whole surface. So first I will find d phi E, or if I take d phi E over here first, so my d phi E will be E bar dot dA bar, which will be E dA cos theta. Now if you look into the theta between E and dA, it's 0, so I get this as E dA cos 0. Therefore my d phi E will be equals to E dA. I want total flux from the surface. So I will integrate this since it's a closed surface. So phi of d phi E is equals to closed surface of E dA. If I simplify this, integration of d phi E should give me phi E, which is equals to E closed surface of dA. Therefore my phi E will be equals to E closed surface of dA. What is the value of closed integration of this dA? That means the surface area of this spherical body. Surface area of a spherical body is 4 pi r square. So this will be 4 pi r square. Let's say that the radius over here is r. So 4 pi r square is my first equation, and that is the equation number 1. This should be the first part. Second part, I use Gauss theorem. So if I use Gauss theorem, it says phi E equals to Q upon epsilon naught. But when I say Q, I mean to say it's a charge. Okay, so I get E is equals to, so I know very well that this is phi E, which is equals to Q by epsilon naught. Phi E is this. I have equation 1 and 2 where phi E is same. So therefore I get this as Q upon epsilon naught equals to E dot 4 pi r square. If I simplify this ahead, I get this as, therefore E is equals to 1 upon 4 pi r square 1 upon 4 pi r square into Q upon epsilon naught. If I rearrange the terms, I get therefore E is equals to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught Q upon r square. This is my equation for E. But since we have to derive Coulomb's law says it's the force, and this force is nothing else but, let's say it's a test charge Q naught into E, and let's say that at this point we take somewhere a Q naught, which is a test charge. So F equals to Q naught of E. So therefore I get this as F equals to E. This is the value of E. So I substitute here, it's 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught Q into Q naught upon r square. This is my equation of Coulomb's law. So I derived the Coulomb's law using the concept of my Gauss theorem and my electric flux. This derivation also can be asked for 3 marks. So you should know this equation. Let's go ahead for the next derivation. That's infinite line of charge. So I have to find the electric field due to an infinite line of charge. So I write here electric field. So my next derivation is electric field due to infinite line of charge. So here let us say that I have charges and it's in the form of line, an infinite number of charges. I'll just show you the diagram. How can we draw the diagram? So let's say that I have these charges which are infinite line of charges. So I'll just show you few charges, and let's say that they are infinite. Let's extend it on both the sides. Let's say that such charges, if I show them in the form of lines, it would look something like this. So I have infinite line of charges, and we have to find the electric field intensity due to these charges. And let's say that there is some point P somewhere here, and we have to find electric field intensity due to infinite line of charges. Now we have to select one such Gaussian surface which should be symmetric with these charges. You can see that if I take a small cylinder across this, my charges would look like something inside the cylinder. So what I do is that I construct a cylinder which is a Gaussian surface around it, and this Gaussian surface what we will draw should pass through the point where we have to find the field. So let's say that I draw a Gaussian surface, and we have to find, let's say that at this particular point, the field. So let's say this is my cylinder, and at this particular point P, I have to find the field. Let's say that I take a small area out of it, and let's say that this is point P, and I have to find field. These charges are inside, so I have to draw a cylinder in such a way that it should be inside. That means this part should be filled. So it's like this. So what can we do in this case is that if this is, I have to find the electric flux which is given out by this particular surface. So if this is P, from here my electric flux is E bar, normal to the surface, and this will be my dA bar, area vector. Similar way, if I take a small area over here, then this is my dA bar. Let's say that this cylinder has a distance r, so this is r, and it has a length L. So if you look at this point here, the electric field and dA, they both are in the same direction. But if you look at the upper part, that is the upper surface, plane surface, you will notice that my electric field here will be in this direction, and my area vector is in the upward direction. Same thing will happen here also. So it's very simple. Again, we'll do the same thing. We'll find the phi E value in both the cases over here. So first let me say I take this as, I know the equation of d phi E, so I am directly using d phi E. That means through this area will be E into dA, that is D. Because I know that E and dA both are in the same direction, cos 0 is 1, so I get this as the equation. Now I want to find across the entire area. So entire area is d phi E, so I integrate this. So across the closed surface I integrate this, and here also I take a closed surface and I integrate this. But now what is the issue over here? I cannot take this as a closed surface, because this will be my curved surface and these are the two other surfaces. So here in this case, if I take this as my closed surface, then I am including my curved surface as well as the plane surface also. But since we are not taking our plane surface initially, we don't need the closed surface and we don't need this, we need only A over here. So we don't need the closed surface, we need only A over here. So if I integrate this, I get this, let's say it's phi E equals to, this will be E into integration of dA of this whole surface. So actually it's a curved surface area. Here if you look at this, this is curved surface area, dA. Curved surface area formula you know very well, it's 2 pi RL. So I got phi E equals to 2 pi RL. Let's say that this is my equation number 1. Then if I look at the plane surfaces, I need to mention about the plane surface also. Plane surfaces, in plane surfaces, my dA bar and E bar, they both are perpendicular. So therefore E into dA cos 90, which will give me 0. So therefore phi E is equals to 0 across these plane surfaces, that is this surfaces. So I got phi E, which is E into 2 pi RL. Now we'll apply the Gauss theorem here. Gauss theorem says phi E equals to Q upon epsilon naught. But since here we are not taking one charge, it's line of charge, so somewhere we need a linear charge density. So let's say I define lambda, which is linear charge density. So this is my linear charge density. When I say linear charge density, the definition of this lambda will be charge per unit length. So lambda equals to Q by L. So therefore lambda into L will be equal to Q. I substitute this value over here. So I get therefore phi E equals to value of Q is lambda into L upon epsilon naught. This is my equation number 2. Now I solve equation 1 and 2. So I write here from equation 1 and 2. Since phi E on both the sides is same for equation 1 and equation 2, so I get this as E into 2 pi RL equals to lambda L upon epsilon naught. If I simplify this ahead, I get this as therefore E is equals to 1 upon 2 pi RL into lambda L upon epsilon naught. So therefore I get this equation as E equals to L and L gets cancelled, so I get this as lambda upon 2 pi epsilon naught R. Or if I want to write this in the form of vector, I need a direction, and I need a direction for R, so therefore it is E bar is equals to lambda upon 2 pi epsilon naught R cap. This will give me the equation in the form of vector, and this they have asked for a 1 mark. So you should know how to derive this equation also. Now homework. So what have we learned till now? It's not difficult. It's only don't by heart such derivations. It's the understanding. And what is the understanding is we need first phi E for a given surface, and then we need a phi E from a Gauss theorem. We equate both of them, you get the answer. But it's only how to decide where do we need the linear charge density and where do we need the surface charge density. We take surface when there is some plane surface like this page. If there are the charges on such a page, then we'll take the surface charge density and not the linear charge density. So this is your homework. You will derive the equation at home for infinite plane sheet of charge. It's very simple, you should know this. So plane sheet of charge, and after this you can try one more at home if you get the time, that is 2 infinite parallel sheets of charges. Not difficult, just the understanding. You should do it on your own. We will solve numericals also based on this, and also the numericals based on Coulomb's law, but after finishing this chapter. We'll most probably complete the chapter in the next session and we'll start the another chapter. Take care. Bye bye. Take care. Bye bye.